Hey everyone, and welcome back. In today's video, I'll show you how to generate configurations for Cisco network devices. And the way we are doing this is by separating the variables from the generic configurations. So we will learn what are the essential components to complete this task and how we are going to create these components. So as you can see on the screen here, the first component that we need is the inventory file. The file will hold information such as the device name, the device type, the device IP address, the credentials, etc., etc. We did that in our previous videos. And then the second component is to create a variable file in YAML format where we create a structure for our variables in order for us to reference them when we call the Jinja2 templates. I will show you how you can create this one in a minute. Next is the template in Jinja2 format. This is used for rendering the configuration. The syntax is pretty flexible, which allows you to create dynamic configuration files. I will show you how you can render configurations and utilizing loops as well as conditional configurations. Finally, we will need a couple of libraries that we will use in our Python environment. This will help us generate the configurations we want, and these are the pyyaml and Jinja2 modules. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into coding and show you how you can generate configurations for Cisco network devices. Okay, guys, so I've created a new project in my IDE environment and I've created a couple of folders. The first folder is host underscore variable, and the second folder is Jinja underscore templates. And the first thing that I want to make sure that we have is we are going to install a couple of modules. The first one is pyyaml, and if you want to do that, then you would need to say pip3 install pyyaml and then hit enter, and you can see that this has been installed. And then the second one is pip3 install Jinja2. Right, brilliant. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create the very first component, which is the inventory file. So I'm going to create a Python file and I'm going to call that inventory. I'm going to say inventory equal to a list. And inside that list, I'm going to have a couple of dictionary elements, each of which will have attributes or device attributes for our devices that we have in our lab. So the first dictionary, I'm going to say host name. And say router-a, comma. And the second key is going to be host. And the IP address is going to be 192.168.1.1. And then I'm going to say username. That is going to be admin. Next is the password. Cisco 123. Next is going to be the secret key. This is optional. You don't have to include that. I'm going anyway. And then we're going to include the device type. And then finally, we're going to include the port as well. And for quickness, I'm going to copy this element. And here I'm going to call the host name is router B, the IP address .2, and the rest of the attributes will be the same or would be similar. So I'm going to save that file. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a YAML file for router A, where I'm going to host all the variables. So I'm going to set that folder. I'm going to right click on that folder, and then I'm going to say I want to create a file. And in that file, I'm going to say router-a.yaml. and then I'll hit enter. And then in here, what I'm going to do, I will start typing all the variables that I need, and I will add the value for each of the variables. The first variable that I'm going to configure is going to be the host name, and the host name here is going to be router-a. And then next, what I want to do, I want to configure a couple of loopback interfaces as well as a physical interface. And also I'm going to configure an SNMP community string for our devices. So to configure the interfaces, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say interfaces colon, and then in here you can notice the indentation. And then what I will do, I will say dash space, and then I'm going to specify the first interface. And then the value for the first interface is going to be loopback1. And then under that interface, I'm going to say int, or short for interface description. And in here, I'm going to say this is a test for interface loopback1. Next, I'm going to set the IP address. And in here, I'm going to say it's going to be 1.1.1.1. I'm also going to set the subnet mask. And here we are going to say 255.255.255.255. And finally, I'm going to set something called interface underscore type. I will explain that in a minute. And I'm going to say this type of interface is going to be virtual. Right. So for quickness, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy all of that and paste it here and paste it again. And then the second interface is going to be for loop 2, and the IP address is going to be 2.2.2.2.2, and the subnet mask is going to be the same. The interface type is going to be virtual, and the interface description is going to be loopback2. And then finally, I'm going to set the physical interface to this interface ID, Ethernet 0/0, and I'm going to say this interface is going to be connected to this link is connected to router-b, and I'm going to set the IP address that is going to be 172.16.1.1, and the mask is going to be 252. And here I'm going to say this is going to be physical. I'm also going to add another attribute or another variable on the bat interface, which is going to be status. And the status here, I'm going to say no shutdown. Brilliant. Next, what I'm going to configure is the SNMP community. So I'm going to say SNMP colon, hit enter, and then I'm going to set the first community. And I'm going to say router-a underscore test underscore 1. And then what I'll do, I will copy that multiple times. Okay, so I believe this is pretty much it for router A configuration variables. So what I will do, I will copy all of that, and then I will create another file, and I'm going to call it router-b.yaml. And I'm going to paste the same configuration, but obviously I'm going to change the variables here. And in here, I'm going to say 111 dot say 3.3.3, And here is going to be 4.4.4.4. And in here is going to be .2. And in this interface description is going to be the opposite. So this link will be connected to router A. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to change all the A's to B's. And I think we are all set. Okay, what we're doing next is we're going to create a Jinja2 template. So under the Jinja_templates folder, I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to right click on it and then I'm going to create a new file. And then I'm going to set the name, which it could be anything, but in my case, I'm going to call it Cisco_config_template. Next, what I want to do is I have got a configurations in place that I would like to use as the base config, and then try to alter the Jinja2 template such that it then produce the configurations I want. So as you can see on the screen, the first one is just service space password encryption. That is standard. I'm not going to change that. The second or the fourth line here, you can see that the host name, it can be a variable. So what we need to do is we need to remove this, and I'm going to specify the variable between a couple of curly quotes or curly brackets. And in here, what we need to do is we would need to reference the host name from the YAML file. So be very mindful that this is going to be case sensitive. So it has to match what you've got in the YAML file. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to show you how you can iterate through an interface configurations. So at the moment, we are saying interface loop X, and then you've got the description, you've got the IP address, and then SNMP if index persist, etc., etc. And we want to be able to kind of like, use a loop to iterate through the interfaces that we have in our YAML file. So what I will do, I will hit enter at this point, and I'm going to open and close curly brackets, and then I'm going to say %%. And inside we are going to say for, and here you just create a local variable, and that could be any local variable. So what I'm going to say for each underscore interface in interfaces. So we would need to get this variable, and we're going to put that in there. And what we're doing, we are saying for each interface in the YAML file in this list, what we need is we need to specify the interface ID, the interface description, the IP address, the subnet mask, the interface type, etc., etc. So I'm going to go back to my template, and in here, I'm going to say, I'm going to remove this. And again, I'm going to replace it with double curly brackets, open and close. And I'm going to say each interface, and I'm going to open a bracket, and inside here, I'm going to reference an interface. And then the next configuration is the description for that interface. So I'm going to actually delete all of that. And again, I'm going to specify the double curly brackets. And in here, we are going to say each interface. And we are going to specify the interface description variable. And then what we are going to do, we're going to set the IP address as well as the subnet mask. So I'm going to delete both of them. And again, I'm going to say each underscore interface. And in here, I want to set IP address first. And then we're going to leave a space, and then we're going to do the same thing. And this time we're going to specify the subnet mask. Right. So this is how we can go through a loop. But I want to include an if statement as well. So what I will do, I will say I'm going to open and close curly bracket, and I'm going to say if each and then we will need the interface type variable is equal to, and here we are going to say physical. So what we're saying here is that we don't want this configuration to be part of the loopback interfaces, but if it's a physical interface, we can go ahead and add this configuration, and I will show you that in a minute. But this is ultimately what this if statement or if condition can do for us. And then what I'll do after that, we must close the if statement. So we will have to say something like end if. And then after that, we will also have to close the for loop as well. So I'm going to say open and close curly bracket, and then I'll say end for. So at this point, we don't need this configuration. You can see that we have managed to optimize our template. We've managed to optimize our basic configuration by using for loop as well as if statement for conditional configurations. And then what we will do next, instead of having 4 lines for our SNMP community, we can only have 1. And in that case, we will literally repeat the same as what we did with the interfaces. We will open a curly bracket and close curly brackets, and we're going to include the percents. And then here we're going to say for each SNMP underscore community n, and we have to go back to our YAML file and reference the variable, let's say in SNMP. And then what we will do, we are going to remove this because these are the variables that can be replaced. And then we will copy this in here, and then we're going to say community. Okay. So at this stage, we have completed our inventory file. We have created our router A YAML file as well as router B, and we also have managed to complete our basic Jinja2 template, where we set a couple of configurations, where we've included for loops as well as if conditions, and we can also print, just basic configurations, as you can see on the screen here. Configurations that we don't need to modify, as well as configurations that we need to modify. So what we will do next, we are going to create a Python file where we actually can create the code so that we can actually generate the configurations we want for multiple devices in one go. Okay, what I'm going to do next, I'm going to create a new file, and that file is going to be Python, and I'm going to call that Python file build configurations for Cisco devices. And the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to import the YAML. And then we are going to say from Jinja2, I want to import environment as well as file system loader. We're also going to specify a few things. So we're going to say from rich import print as r_print. And we're also going to import the inventory. So I'm going to say from inventory, you want to import inventory. And then finally, we are going to say from Netmiko, we want to import the connect handler. So the first thing that I want to do is create the main function. So I'm going to say main, and here I'm going to say def main, and inside the main function, I'm going to say, I want to say for each underscore device in inventory, I want to be able to just print the host name, for instance, just to prove the concept. So we're going to put that under print statement. And then what I'll do, I'll right click and then I'll execute the script. And you can see that we've managed to get the router A and router B. So that's the first step. So we are going to create a function that will help us generate the config file. And we are going to say, for instance, function underscore generate underscore config. And then we will pass a parameter, and the parameter is just the host name. And what we are going to do here, we are going to say file underscore data underscore YAML. So what we are doing, we are going to create a file and then we will save it in that variable, which is said file underscore data underscore YAML. And then what we are going to do, we're going to say YAML dot safe underscore load. And then we are going to say open, and I'm going to use the if so that I can specify a variable within a string. And I'm going to say hosts underscore variable forward slash, and then here we're going to specify the host name here that is being passed by the function. And we're also going to say .yaml. So at this point, we will have an object. So if I were to go ahead and print this, obviously we will need to call that method for each of the devices that we have. So I'm going to say function underscore generate config, and I'm going to say each device, and we're going to specify the host name. So if I go ahead and execute this, you can see that we have access to our YAML file. So you can see that we can get the key, the first key, which is host name, and the value, which is router A. We also have an outer key, and inside the outer key, we have a list of dictionaries, and then we have an inner key, value, so on and so forth. So what we can do next is we can comment this line. So we are going to create an object for my environment from the environment class, which I have imported from Jinja2. And I will then pass some parameters to locate the locations of the template folder. So I would say env underscore object or OPG, and I'm going to say that is equal to environment, and inside I'm going to say loader equal to file system loader, and inside I'm going to say dot forward slash Jinja templates. And also I'm going to include a couple of options which are trim underscore blocks, and I'm gonna set that to true, as well as strip underscore blocks to be true as well. Now I will use the environment object to set the templates that I want in question. So I'm going to use the get template method. So all I need is to pass in the name of the template, and then I will create an object. So what I'll do, I'll say template underscore var equal to env underscore obj dot get underscore template, and in here we are going to specify the name of the file, and the name of the file is Cisco underscore config underscore template. J2. And at this point, what we can do, we can print this template underscore var, and you'll see that this is an object. So if I go ahead and print this, we do have a problem for our template. And here we also need to finish off our end for. Right, okay, so I'm going to save that, go back to my code, and then I will execute that again. And in here you can see that we have template Cisco underscore config underscore template dot g, which is the object, the first object, and the second one is for the second object or for the second device. Right, so what we can do next is we can then create a config variable, because that's the variable that will hold all the configurations that is being built or created or generated from the Jinja2 templates. So we're going to say template underscore var dot render, and in here we're going to pass the file underscore data underscore YAML. So what I can do at this stage, I can say r underscore print, and we're going to set the config. And let's just print this to show you what I mean by that. So if I scroll all the way up, you can see that the first template is being populated all the way here. So you've got the service password encryption. This is static. We haven't done any data manipulation whatsoever. And the second config is the hostname router A. And then you have interface loopback 1. The description is, as you can see on the screen, this is a test for interface loopback 1. The IP address is 1.1.1.1. The subnet mask is 255.255.255, etc., etc. The same applies for interface loopback 2. And then, as you can see, the physical interface here is gig Ethernet 00, and you can see that we have had added the snmp if index persist command as an additional command for the physical interface. What we have missed, or however, is we have missed the no shot command. So what I'll do, I'll go back and I will say I will open up a double curly brackets, and inside there I'm going to specify the status. If I were to go ahead and rerun this, you can see that the no shot has been populated under the interface gig Ethernet 00, and these two configurations have not been populated for interface loopback 1 and 2. And if we also look at the SNMP community, you can see that the SNMP server community router B underscore test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4 have been populated accordingly. If we wanted to remove the exclamation mark, we can. we just need to go back in here and we just need to remove this, and that will do for us. So go back, rerun the script, and you can see the config as we expected here. So the first configuration is for router A, interface loopback 1, loopback 2, and then gig Ethernet 00, and finally the 4 SNMP commands community. And then the second router, again, the same configuration pretty much. The only difference is that a few variables, such as the router B, the host name is different. The loopback interface is going to be the same, but the IP address is different. The same applies for the second interface. And then also for the physical interface, you can see that the IP address has been altered and has been changed or updated accordingly. And then finally, the SNMP community also have been updated accordingly. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually return this configuration so that I can store it in a variable, and I would call that config equal, and I will call that here. So I'm going to also comment line number 19. And then at this stage, what we are able to do is we are able to generate the configurations. And what we can do next is we can start pushing these configurations into the end device. So what I will do next, I will actually create another function, and that function I'm going to say fun underscore send config to end device. And in here, we are going to take the device inventory. So I'm going to say device, and we are also going to take the config that we want to implement. And inside, I am going to say something like, let's say net underscore connect. That is going to equal to connect handler. And inside that, we are going to specify the attributes for the connect handler. So I'm going to say device underscore type, and that is going to be device. And we are going to call the device underscore type key. So if I go back to my inventory, the device type is what we're calling here. And then what I also need to include is the host. And again, we are going to say, just to save time, I'm going to say host name. So if you are not sure, go back to your inventory and get the right key. So that is going to be the host. And then we would need to specify the username and so on and so forth. And here is going to be the same username, unless I specified it to be user, but no, it's username. So this is fine. Next, we're going to set the password. I'm going to say device, and the key is going to be password as well. Next is going to be secret. And this is optional, but I'm going to include it anyway. And I'm going to set the key, and the key is secret as well. And then finally, we are going to set the port. And in here, we're going to say device port. That's it. At this point, what we can do, we can prove that we are able to actually log into the device and fetch the host name. So what I'll do, I'll say print underscore connect find prompt. And I'm going to execute this just to make sure that we have the right one. Oh yeah, of course, we haven't actually called the method. So we will need to do that now. And in here, we are going to say that we want to pass each device attribute as well as the config that we just generated. I'll run that again. You can see the first one is router A and the second one is router B. Brilliant. So I'll just comment line 37. And then what I'll do, one of the things that we will need to understand is the configurations that have been produced by our template is string type. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say print type, and then I'll say config. And I will play that, or I will execute the script. And you can see here that the type is a string. So that means we would need to actually break that string into multiple lines such that we are able then to send the configurations to the end device. So what we can do, we can say something like, we can create a variable. I'm going to call that variable local underscore list underscore config, and that is going to be config dot split lines. And if we were to do this type, if we were to print the type again for that variable, you will see that the variable has changed from string to list, which is what we want. So at this point, we are able then to push the configurations to the end device. So what I can do is I can say output equal to net underscore connect send config underscore set. And then here, what we need to do, we need to say config underscore command, and we just need to specify the list that we just created. And then what we can do, we can then print the output. Before I go ahead and execute the code, what I want to show you is I want to show you my devices. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log into my device A and device B. And what I'll do here, first thing I will say show interface, show IP interface brief. And you can see that my router A, I don't have any virtual interfaces that are configured. And if I go to router B, the same applies for router B. I also don't have any configurations for SNMP community. So if I say show run include SNMP or community, just say community. You can see that I don't have any configurations here. I don't have any configuration there. So what I can do then, I can go ahead and execute this. And you can see that we went into configuration terminal mode. We pushed this configuration, host name, interface 1, or interface loopback 1, interface loopback 2, so on and so forth. We also configured the SNMP, and then we went to router B. We did the same thing, and we've managed to configure all of that. So if I go back to my devices now, and if I issue SNMP community, for instance, you can see that I have configured these configurations accordingly. So I am on router B, and you can see that the community string is router B underscore test1. If I go to router A, you can see that the SNMP community router A underscore test1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. If I also say show IP interface brief, you can see that a couple of interfaces have been created, and you can see that gig Ethernet 00 is also up and running. And if I were then to ping the other side, you can see that the ping is successful. If I go to the other device, you can see that this interface is now configured and up and running. So with the loopback interfaces as well. Okay guys, so we've reached the end of the video. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss our future videos and future tutorials and tech insights. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop a comment below. I read all your comments and I'm here to assist you. Stay curious, stay inspired, and until next time, peace.